Welcome to Perspectives in Adventist Education. I'm your host, Stephen Brawley, Director of Secondary Education and Accreditation at the North American Division. Adventist education started in the late 1800s and has grown to operate programs from early childhood, elementary, secondary, and university levels, becoming the largest Protestant private school system in the world. Our graduates have become prominent thought leaders in all fields. Yet, few outside of the system know who we are and what we do. This series will seek out current voices to share how we are facing educational questions with an Adventist perspective. Today's episode with Charles Tapp, President of the Potomac Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, is interviewing Becky, Meharry, and Jeni Schmidt on why standards-based learning.
Hello, I'm Charles Tapp, President of the Potomac Conference of Seventh-day Adventists, and I'm here at the NAD Educators Convention in hot Phoenix, Arizona. And I've got two very special guests with us today who want to talk about something that's very important when it comes to the field of education. So I'm going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and then tell us more about our topic for today.
All right, my name is Jeni Schmidt. I teach part-time, and I'm part-time administrator at Columbia Adventist Academy in Vancouver, Washington, which is in the Oregon Conference. And my exposure to standards-based learning, which is what we're talking about today, began, I'd say 10, 12 years ago when I was working at a school in California, and we had a grant from the Bainham Foundation. It was called Commonwealth Foundation at that time. Yeah. And so they would just let us dream, what do you want to do to get better? And we decided we wanted to be better teachers. And so that began our journey of trying to figure that out, and we landed on standards-based education and stayed with that. And so I've just been, I want to say tinkering with that, working with that for the past 10, 12 years.
Wow. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah. I'm Becky, Meharry, and I'm the elementary director at the North Pacific Union Conference, the Great Northwest, where Jeni serves as a teacher. And my journey with standards-based learning started when the NAD announced years ago, we're going to go to standards-based learning. But I was an administrator, so it's not something that I was able to search out and practice as a teacher. So I've been on that journey looking for the best in standards-based learning and how to apply that in Adventist education. And if I were to kind of summarize what is standards-based learning, I would say some people think of it as just grading, just putting a different grade on the report card, and now we're doing this thing called standards-based learning. But it's actually a whole system. It's a shift in the way that we plan, we teach, we assess, that students learn, that we grade, and that we report out to parents and students. That's all based on really clearly articulated learning goals that are in a learning progression. So it starts students and we use a proficiency scale to kind of tell students and parents and teachers what that might look like. And so it's more about changing kind of the lens of how we look at education.
Can you give us an example of what standards-based learning is?
I'm an English teacher, and I teach, let's say, my freshman English class, and there's a series of standards, the goals that their students are heading towards. They're very clearly stated, they're very focused, and I use those goals for myself and my planning. I share them with the students. They see those goals. They know when we start class that this is what this particular piece of the standard is what we're focused on today. I'm trying to think of an example. Like there's, narrative writing, I would say, and it talks about all the pieces of narrative writing, and so they know that when they are proficient at this particular standard, they are going to be able to do the following things that the standard lists.
Now you said something very important that caught my ear. What I hear you saying is that the key, at least one of the keys, is that the student has to know and understand that there is a particular standard.
Right.
There's a goal.
And it's that focus. You just see such a difference in the classroom. And part of my job, like I said, is a part-time administrator, so I spend time in classrooms all the time. And I can go into a particular classroom, and if kids are working, I can come up and say, hey, what are you doing? And they can articulate exactly what it is that they are going to learn that day. And it's that clarity, that focus, and that's for the teacher, that's for the student, that's for the parent. So parents, the goals, parents know the standards that students are working towards.
Let's take a minute and talk about the parents. I think they're an important part of this whole process. How do you educate the parent in standards-based learning?
I think oftentimes the students educate the parents.
Ah.
So it's not something that we typically roll out this whole new thing all at once and overwhelm people. You kind of take baby steps. You start with how you talk to students about learning, using those proficiency scales and standards to show students what we're working on. And then students are going home and showing their parents, I'm doing this, I'm working on this, I got to practice this. So gradually parents are kind of brought on board with that proficiency scale. And then we start educating them, giving them information about what standards-based learning, the long-term goal will look like, which will eventually be a different type of report card.
Right.
So, kids are great at educating their parents on what this looks like because they get excited. I think for me, one of the things where I saw standards-based learning in action for the first time that excited me, I was visiting a school that was all standards-based learning, a little first grader. I asked her what she was working on. She was able to pull out a data binder that showed what she was doing in each subject, had her proficiency scales, her goals, and she told me, I've been working on adding, and I'm at a 3.0 on that, but my next goal is to work on this over here. And she knew what her goals were. And that's exciting when kids, the focus isn't, sometimes you go in a classroom, what are you working on? Well, we're doing this worksheet, and I missed 5, and now I got to do it again. Or we're gluing popsicle sticks together or whatever. And that's still fun stuff. Don't get me wrong. But it's exciting when kids are excited about their learning goal and they can tell you what that is that they're working on.
And being an educator myself, that's huge. Getting our students to get excited about learning.
And when parents see that, they buy in.
That's half the battle.
That's right.
Yeah. So how do you get parents involved?
One of the first things I do in my classes at the beginning of the year, especially with my freshman English and parents that haven't been exposed much to say proficiency scales, which lists the standard on it. I have kids build a proficiency scale. It can be how to make a peanut butter sandwich, and then they got to take it home and explain it to their parents. And parents have heard a little bit about that. We try to do we have times when parents can come and listen, and we try to talk about that when they come and look at the school. We do Zoom meetings and just send stuff home in emails, and all our teachers email their syllabuses home, and is very explicitly stated this is how it works in my classroom, and it's just constant communication. I just don't think you can over communicate with parents on that, and in my experience, when parents truly understand standards-based learning, it makes sense to them, and they like it. They buy in.
That's huge. What I'm hearing you say is that students then don't worry about failure because they're always growing, they're always progressing, so they feel excited. Look at what I've done.
Yes.
I was here today, but now I'm here.
Right.
Yeah,
right. And then teachers really capitalize on that, so there'll be times in class where they'll just do something to figure out where kids are at, like a little formative assessment, and then they'll give them that feedback, and then they'll go back and look at their proficiency scale and check off what they know, and kids love that. Wow. And then they say, so here's what I need to know now, and the teachers say, that's where we're heading next. Wow. And so it just takes off.
And it's about setting up that culture in the classroom, or it helps create that culture of a growth mindset, like you said. Yes. So kids are always looking at that safe environment where we can be vulnerable and we can grow, and that everybody's a different place.
Yes.
And I might not know it, but I just don't know it yet.
Right. Yeah.
Because somebody's going to help me get there, and it's a journey.
And I think it really breeds that kids working with kids, You can see in the classroom where it's really clicking and kids are working on stuff, they'll go ask other kids. And they'll say,
Really?
Yeah, and I mean, it's a beautiful thing to see.
Can you help me do this? I need to do this 2.0. How did you do it? Show me.
Right.
Yeah.
So kids then, our students, are no longer intimidated by other students. and the progress that other students are making that they may not be making themselves.
Yeah.
That's the goal.
That is the goal.
That's the goal.
Yeah.
This is huge.
Yeah.
And you all seem excited about this.
Oh,
Yeah,
very
for
excited.
sure.
I don't, we would not be advocates for standards-based learning if we did not think it was in the best interest of students and teachers.
And teachers.
Yeah.
And teachers.
And parents. Then,
And
right?
parents,
Yeah.
right.
I'd been teaching for a while before I started into standards-based learning, and it rejuvenated. I was telling Becky earlier, like it changed my outlook on the classroom. It made me as a teacher know that I need to continually learn too, and it's just exciting to work towards that, to see kids see have that clarity and have that focus, and yeah, it's just exciting.
Now, I'm sure you all have many stories that you can share of how this has really impacted your school, your class, even yourselves.
For sure.
I think what Jeni just shared about her own teaching is what's really keeps me going, is seeing my teachers get excited. I've had teachers that, are, I don't know about this whole standards-based learning thing. And, hey, rightfully so in education as the next agenda comes up and what are we doing next? But when I see the excitement they have after they start using a unit that they've built around a proficiency scale, and they see how their students respond, they are energized. And I don't even have to be the spokesperson for standards-based learning anymore because my teachers are out there saying, you got to do this. Listen to what my students are saying about this. My kids aren't asking me anymore, what do I need to do to get an A? They're saying, can you help me learn this? Or wait, I don't have time to do that right now because I got to work on this so I can get to that 3.0.
And they can see their progress along the way, right?
That's what just excites me, is seeing that, like Jeni said about herself, that re-energizing our teaching, but also impacting our students in that way that they take control of their learning and they feel empowered to do it.
Now, how long has standards-based learning been implemented in our Adventist school system?
I think there's a number of schools that have played with it. Like I said, we had that, Bainham Foundation grant. So that was like 10 years ago, 12 years ago. But I'd say that in the conference that I work in, the Oregon Conference, we've been, and my school in particular, we're going into our 4th year. And it's interesting to me because, it's a big change. It's a big change in thinking for teachers, for students, and for parents. And so we just started in slow.
Okay.
Asking teachers to do a little, it may be one class that they're working on with standards. So we took this slow approach, but, and then some teachers it just gelled with them and they just took off. Other teachers continued, the slow approach. But I just remember at the beginning of last year, so last year was our 3rd year, I started to go into the copy room and I'd see, things that teachers had copied off, and I could see evidence of standards, and I could go into classrooms, and the talk, it just started to gel, and I get goosebumps talking about that. When you really see that switch and that changeover, and now we're sold, we're moving forward, and yeah, it's really fun.
How about educating our teachers? Is there a process that they go through?
Yeah, each, the NAD has been providing trainings. We kind of kicked off this most recent move towards standards-based learning, I think around 2018. People kind of started getting traction. There had been a little bit of work in the past on it. But they started providing some trainings that were virtual, that all teachers and leaders across North America could join those to learn about standards-based learning. They're on ALC, so our teachers can still, as we get new teachers coming in, can go and watch those on Adventist Learning Community. And then each union and conferences are picking up and carrying on that training as well. The NAD is still in the background, kind of providing resources. We have a new thing called NAD Toolbox that's out that'll have all of our SBL resources on it for teachers. So I think there's a lot of training that has happened, but we also know that you got to get so much training under your belt, then you got to get some practice. And then you got to go get a little more training or collaboration or conversations, because it's so interesting because it's a huge paradigm shift for us, but it doesn't mean it changes everything that we do. We're pulling on the good things that we've always done, but we're
Right.
just shifting a little that has this huge impact.
Yeah.
Now, how does this support the mission of the Seventh Adventist Church, this standards-based learning?
Well, I think of a quote that's very familiar to Adventists, an Ellen White quote that talks about the true work of education is to train young people to be thinkers, not mere reflectors. And that's, the research has shown that that is what standards-based, the teaching of standards really focuses learning and by challenging students to think deeper.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's about
great.
the whole child, and that's what Adventist education is about, is educating the whole child. And standards-based allows us to focus in, get clarity on those learning targets, and then just layer in all those things that we know are best. Having experiences, using what we know in an experiential way, the spiritual values. So I think it really does support our mission and kind of enhances what we've always done.
The whole faith and learning concept.
That's right.
Yeah. That's great. That's great. Now, if I'm a parent, and I am, but my children are all adults, but if I come to you and say, this sounds pretty good, where can I get more information as a parent about standards-based learning?
Yeah, Jeni and I were talking about that, and we're like, wow, all the resources we know about are teacher-focused. But all of our schools that are shifting that direction have provided, resources for parents, kind of information, kind of in a way that would be understandable for parents.
Right.
But there's also a lot of great podcasts out there that you can listen.
Podcasts.
Yeah, podcasts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And, you can also just search the internet. There's a lot of information out there. It can be overwhelming as a parent if you get on the research side of it, because it's like, whoa, all this education language. But I think you could wade through that and find, especially if you pick up a school that's doing standards-based learning, look on their website. They're going to have things for parents that are articulated in a way that helps parents to understand what it looks like.
Now, I just had an idea. What if the two of you put together your own podcast for standards-based learning?
Well, wouldn't that be fun?
That
Yeah.
would be fun.
Would you be our host?
Oh, sure. I think that's a great idea.
Well,
That
I think that Adventist education should do that.
Yeah.
I'm not sure Jeni and I would raise our hands and volunteer, but I bet we could find some people that would. Because we have a lot of great educators out there doing standards-based learning.
Okay. Now, we've talked about a lot of things in these last few minutes, but can you share with the parents, what's the takeaway that each of you want them to have based on what you've shared with us today? The one thing.
I think, I'm going to say one word, clarity. To me, clarity is what standards-based learning is all about.
Okay.
It gives that laser focus to teachers on how to plan, gives that laser focus to students on what they're supposed to be learning, and now it's clarity for parents. When parents are like, what does my child need to work on? They know. They know exactly. It brings clarity to that parent about how am I supporting my child at home, instead of just work harder, or do more, or do an extra credit. I know exactly how to help my student at home. So I think clarity is probably the one word that wraps up standards-based learning.
Okay.
I would echo Becky on that with clarity/focus. The whole idea of standards-based learning is what does the child need to know and be able to do, and keeping that in mind. Standards just gives you that really clear focus. This is what I need to know as a student. This is what I need to be able to do. And when I'm able to do that, then I've reached proficiency. And there's a lot of motivation in that for students. Students that aren't maybe necessarily motivated because it was just all kind of fuzzy. We're doing this, but I'm not sure why. Well, we're doing this because we're heading here. And that gives them that focus and motivation.
Here's a trick question. Who benefits the most from standards-based
goodness.
learning? Is it the teacher, the educator? Is it the parent? Or is it the student? Or is it all the above?
Oh, it's got to be all the above.
It has to be. I mean,
has to be.
that's what I've seen as a practitioner. That's what I've seen. It has helped me so much as a teacher, so much, and I can see it in my students. I can see it across my school, and and then parents. I think we've said this before that you sit down with the parent and talk it through, and they get it, and they like it, and they like how it helps them help their student.
Okay.
So they sit down to do something at home and the student doesn't know what to do. Well, here, this is what I'm heading towards.
Right.
And,
So each entity has a role to play.
absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that joining of the home and the school.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep.
And
Which
that's
I
a
love.
huge part in Christian,
That's right.
Adventist
Absolutely.
Christian education. I think Ellen White says, I believe it's in education, that the job of educating our children, first and foremost, is not the school, it's not even the church, it's the home.
Right.
It's the home.
Yeah.
So standards-based learning, what I'm hearing then, brings in the home to the entire equation.
Yeah, that's right.
That's great. Well, this has been a joy.
Thank you. It has been.
I really
yes.
appreciate having you all today
Thank you.
and sharing with all of our parents out there and the non-parents, all the parents
That's
to be,
right.
about standards-based
Absolutely.
learning.
You got it.
I just want to end with this one quote from the book Education by Ellen White. It's my favorite. She says, higher than the highest human thought can reach is God's ideal for his children.
Amen.
Amen?
Amen.
God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you.
This is Stephen Brawley, your host. Thanks for listening. Join us again next time as we explore more perspectives in Adventist education.
An Adventist Learning Community Podcast.